Okay, well, Adam, let's start with letting people know in Eagle Nation where and what you're up to these days.
Retired from playing football, and then I live out in Salt Lake City, Utah. So
Okay.
yeah,
So what are you retired from football? So what's keeping you busy?
still training a lot, and then I'm starting to really get into MMA.
Okay.
So everything from jujitsu, kickboxing, Muay Thai, wrestling, everything. So all that stuff.
Very cool. So let's take you back to your days at Big Walnut High School down in the just outside of Columbus. And how did you come to the decision to go to Pitt Johnstown and play basketball?
When I was coming out of high school, I was pretty scrawny, and basketball was really the only scholarship ride that I had that was going to be a full ride and have it covered. I actually wanted to go to Cincinnati and just be a student
Okay.
and just be whatever. But my dad had a little bit of money that he had saved up for college, and he's like, listen, if you go to Cincinnati, you're either taking the full ride scholarship or you're getting zero help from me.
Oh,
So I ended up going to Pitt Johnstown and started there.
okay. Well, it kind of made the decision a little easier for you, didn't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you spent a year at UPJ playing basketball, and at what point did you decide that A, that wasn't necessarily the right situation, and B, you wanted to switch sports?
Um, Probably after the season of basketball. Now, I love basketball. I still love basketball. I still play basketball. I still have friends that I made, really, really close friends that I made in my one season there at UPJ. Um, I felt like when I was at UPJ, I felt like college basketball had turned into a free throw shooting contest. It was just very, very touchy and kind of soft. And so that was part of it. And then the other part of it, I was spending like every weekend at home, um, coming back and forth. It was a 4-hour drive from Columbus. So I wanted to maybe do something a little bit closer and then play a sport that was a little bit more physical. So I was like, you know what, let's try to go closer to home and start and play football again. So that was kind of the thought of it.
So you get to Ashland, and I remember that my first year here was your first year here, and you were playing behind a couple of senior tight ends, so you didn't get a lot of
Mhm.
chance to play that first year. And then that year, kind of that transition from basketball to football, how much did that help you do what you ended up doing later on?
A lot actually. So it was between Ashland and ODU, which is in Columbus.
Okay.
But another big, this might have been actually the biggest factor of me leaving Pitt Johnstown was the food was so atrocious. Um, they had just the worst cafeteria. I don't know what it is now. Again, this is 10 years ago, so maybe they've changed it up or whatnot. But I was eating out every single meal. I was eating just literally all kinds of food out all the time, spending so much money. And when I was looking at transferring, Ashland actually did not initially, if I remember correctly, did not give me any sort of scholarship money to come play football. So I just walked on, and then I earned it right after that season. But ODU was going to actually give me some money to play football and play basketball. I would have been able to do both.
Oh,
And it was closer to home. But the food service at ODU was the same food service as the one
oh.
at Pitt Johnstown. It was Sodexo. Sodexo is horrendous, the worst of the worst. And so I went to Ashland and was like, all right, convo. I can actually eat here. So that was actually a big role of it. And then, yeah, playing behind a couple senior tight ends. I needed the time just to work out and put on weight because I probably came into that season at like 220 pounds and still 6'6", 6'7". So just thin, much more built to play basketball than I was to be on the end of a line or anything like that. So it was a necessary year just to work out and eat and repeat.
Before we get to your 2 years here, after that, was the UPG experience the start of the Chipotle experiments where you're eating Chipotle all the time, or would that come later?
No, they didn't even have one out there. I don't think so. I was eating Denny's. I was eating Denny's. I was eating the mall. Like, you know how every mall has like a little Japanese chicken
Yep.
rest. Yeah, I was eating that, and then eating Red Lobster at night. Apple, like just everything now that I would never touch. But but and yeah. So yeah, that was before it even. Before I was even around that all the time. So
So you end up putting on weight, you end up eating in Convo, you're getting the weight room, and then 2015 and 2016, arguably the best 2 seasons for a tight end in the history of NCAA Division II football. So what was that like for you personally to play that well and that kind of level, and also helping us in 2015 win a conference championship and go to the postseason in the NCAA?
uh, it was a lot of fun, and I think the biggest reason was just the guys that I played with. It was a ton of fun, and being around them 24/7, and all of us sharing in the success was awesome. Yeah, as far as yeah, go ahead. What was the exact question as far as
Just what was,
myself?
yeah, I mean, you were out there, man among boys, matched up on the goal line against corners and safeties and scoring 4 touchdowns in certain games. That had
Yeah,
to be a lot of fun to just kind of dominate at that level.
yeah, it was. I mean, it was just I wasn't thinking about anything as far as NFL or playing after that. Like, again, I had walked on, so I was just trying to get school paid for and have fun and do the best that do the best I could with teammates and coaches, and it ended up just being an amazing, really 3 years because we were still good that year prior as well. So those 3 years really that I spent there were awesome.
And then you do have those last 2 years in 15 and 16 with all those numbers. And you mentioned you hadn't been thinking of the NFL, but at what point in that process did you start thinking about the NFL? Because ultimately you did pass up your senior year and go there.
Yeah, I think it was just 2016. There was just more. There was scouts, at practices, scouts at games, and I wasn't the only guy that had a shot at playing, but I think it was like I think I was the one that they were, really coming through for. So I just tried to, I don't know, I just tried to keep going and tune it out as best I could. At that point, I was still, gosh, how old would I have been? 21, maybe 22. I was just so ignorant to the way that everything actually worked. So I just was show up, practice, do whatever, and just kind of do the same thing I had been doing for the last few years. So just trying to stay in a routine and not let it go to not let me think anything else otherwise or try to be something that I wasn't because there was eyes on me.
And you mentioned it. What a lot of people forget about when they think about turning pro a year early, you're 21, 22 years old. So it's not like it's an easy process or something you're thinking about day in and day out. You still got classes, you still got practice, you still got games. So, I mean, you're still young to be making that type of the decision about your future.
Yeah, and here's the other thing too is like before all the NIL and all that
Yep.
stuff
Hmm.
where you could have where if I wanted to I could have essentially transferred to a bigger school in maybe one of those last year or two that I played, and who knows what would have happened then because back when I would have had to sit out a year. I would have had to sit out a year. So honestly, for me, I look back at it. I think I'm like, man, that was such a that was such a timing on in God's timing, I guess, for me to not have that because I ended up going like second round. So who knows what would have happened if I would have gone to a bigger school and yeah, might not have touched the ball. That's how I just yeah. Anyways,
And you mentioned it in the 2017 draft, you go second round as a D2 player. So with the baby Gronk and everything else that happened surrounding all that stuff, how much of a whirlwind was that time for you?
oh, majorly. I didn't as much as I had great agents and people around me to try to help me get prepared for it. Just the jump from Division 2 and having you know, just Ashland has some of the best facilities, and they're even better now, right? They're even
Yep.
better with that indoor. Honestly, they are. The indoor is incredible as I've been through it once. Even when I was playing, just the weight room and the facilities are second to none in Division 2, but they still just really pale in comparison to the NFL teams that I had the privilege of being around. And secondly, they don't prepare you for just all the eyeball. It can't prepare you for all the eyeballs when I don't know how many people or the most people that we played in front of, probably a Grand Valley or a Ferris State or something like that, where
Yep.
it was probably still less than what 10,000,
Oh yeah.
way less than 10,000. Yeah, and then now you're in front of 50,000, 60,000 people, and I can't hear the snap count. I can't hear, and so I do think there's that is one advantage that guys that are playing at higher levels get, is just they have that atmosphere that they're accustomed to by the time they walk into the doors of an NFL team. And I've showed up to the rookie minicamp. I didn't know that they were going to provide me with cleats and gloves and jersey and everything, like everything, with as much as I could have had a new pair of gloves every day. I didn't know. I showed up with my cleats that I wore the year prior, and wore those cleats because I was like, I don't know, are they going to take this out of my check? Is this like coming out of my, all that? And I was like, I'm good. These are good cleats. These are good enough. Like, so little did I know, you can get as many of that you get a new pair every day. And so, yeah, that was just a jump adjusting to that and having everything just completely taken care of in a way, and
So
the pressure of it though as well. So,
you mentioned it, and I was going to bring that up. Being a second round pick and having that nickname, I'm sure that particularly with Chicago, it probably was not easy for you to kind of hear that and see that with the days of social media that we're on and all that kind of stuff.
no, yeah, and there's just was I was honestly almost so ignorant that I just didn't understand it at the time. It's just not able to get completely the magnitude of it all, and just kind of tried to turn my head away from it. And yeah, almost not trying to embrace it, when in the end you just need to embrace what it is and accept it, and not just be too hard headed, I guess. Um, and it took me a couple years. It took me a couple years to adjust, for sure, to the speed of the game. It took me, a season, I'd say. Um, and then just to adjust to everything else that comes in the NFL. It really took me until Miami to figure out where I was at and really start to thrive. And I think my career kind of would be representative of that, and just the success I had with everything. So,
And unfortunately, there were some injuries along the way. And then obviously in 2022, the Dolphins attempted to trade you to Houston. Unfortunately, you failed the physical there. So was that kind of the point where you kind of said, well, I may have to start thinking about something beyond this?
um, that was not. So I ended. Yeah. So I in 21, I missed 5 games with a partially torn ACL, is what I was diagnosed with. And then after the season, they rechecked it. Same thing. It still had. I was wearing a brace I ended up coming back and playing, I don't know, 4 or 5 games maybe in the end of 21, um, with a brace, and just dealing with the pain, whatever, the instability. And after the season, I was like, okay, I guess I just need to rehab and take some time off. And so I went through basically 8 months, or not 8 months, I guess 6, 7 months before training camp started in July, and I skipped OTAs that year just because of a relationship and didn't want to do the long distance. And I just needed to rehab my knee even more because I was struggling, and got it to the point where I could run around and practice for training camp, and then showed up in training camp. We had a new staff at the time, so probably not the best thing to skip their OTAs at minicamp, but um, showed up 3 weeks into camp, 2 or 3 weeks into camp. I was full participant in everything. My knee still did not feel like right, but I was practicing, doing everything. And then they traded me, and that's when I went to Houston, and they did their MRIs of all, the prior injuries, and they said, "Hey, dude, like you don't have an ACL in your left knee." And I'm like, "What do you mean? Like I've been a full practice, full participant, running around, playing at the highest level. What do you mean?" And so they're like, "Yeah, we can't accept the trade. You have to go back." So I got shipped back to Miami naturally, and then at that point it was like, I guess, I gotta get surgery. So that's when I pretty much sat that whole year just doing surgery. Yeah.
So then the NFL career is over. I'm watching you on Instagram, obviously, and then I see last year that you end up getting baptized. So I'd
Yeah.
love to hear the story about how that came about.
Yeah, well, it was kind of a thing along the lines of I had the previous year 21 I had played really well. So that was the last time they had film really from me playing, and then the ACL happened. So there was opportunities, I think, for me to play, um, go to sign on to a new team and go play, go practice, at least have an opportunity to go earn a spot and play. Um, Once my knee had healed in 2023, would that be what the year was? Yeah, it would have been 2023. Um, and My knee, after I got it done and healed up, I was like, man, I realized how long I probably had been dealing with it for a year or two, because it was so much better and able to do the things that I was like wanted to do. And just at that point, understanding my body better physically, being in better conditioning and shape, and going into it. But the reason that I had moved out to Utah, I had an ex-girlfriend that was doing a residency, and the long distance was a thing. So I saw that working out more important in my career. And so I kind of shunned the NFL stuff until really the end of the 2023 season, just for the last few weeks, and said, okay, maybe now I can go get on a team and do a workout and maybe play a few weeks. And yeah, and then we can make it work both ways. Is kind of the line. It was a kind of that line of thinking, and that's just not how the NFL works and worked out. But again, that football career ended, that relationship ended, and it was kind of just like a whole blank slate for me, opening up, and it ended up being, again, such a blessing. So there's no hard feelings towards anyone or myself or any of the situations that led to it, because again, I really, really came to faith in that kind of spell, in that season of life. So yeah.
How has God kind of guided you in that post NFL way, and how he kind of informs you in everything at this point?
Yeah, I think, man, I just think how much, like, it's a struggle for athletes, for myself for sure, and just other people ending their careers. And I I got asked recently, I was like, hey, like, tell me about your jobs and what you've done. I never worked a single job other than playing in the NFL. Like, that was the only thing that I ever did. And so, really not understanding, and then also being able to, not have to work and like figure out what I want to do, is just it was a big it was like, where do I go from here? I've never done anything else. I've never done anything else. And then just kind of having that relationship with God to lean on and understand, like, okay, it doesn't really matter what I do. Like, I'm still going to be loved and, a blessed son of God. So it just really, really has been a rock to lean on and just see where I go. And yeah, so that's
I
kind
love
of,
it.
not have really the biggest thing is to not, I don't know. I got so caught up in like, oh, I need to do something. I need to do this. I need to do that because I think so much of what we tie our value in is in what we do. And I think for me playing in the NFL, as much as I tried not to allow that to be a part of my identity, like it absolutely became part of it, right? And then when that got taken away, and then the girl I was with got taken, it was like all my identity had kind of fallen down, and it was like, what do I put it in? And then that's really where it came in. And now I'm just kind of taking every day trying not to. I'm not perfect at not taking it for granted, but trying to be grateful for every day and realizing like it doesn't matter as much what I do. That's not why I'm here. So, yeah.
Well, last question we always do on these Eagle Rewinds, Adam. If somebody came up to you and said, "Hey, my son's thinking about coming to AU," what would your sales pitch be?
Oh, I've tried to sell a few people on AU that haven't even asked me about AU. I tried to sell them, hey, you thought about playing Division II football and going there? I think you can if listen, this is the thing. You can come in as a guy that is highly touted and has a scholarship and go play well and make it and go play at the next level. You can do that. Or you can come in as a guy that has no scholarship and kind of developed late or hasn't developed, and you can come in and work your butt off, end up playing, end up getting your college paid for, whatever it is, and who knows where that can take you. Um, and if you're good enough, the opportunities will come for you at a much faster rate at a school like Ashland than they will if you try to go walk on to Ohio State. You got to try to go walk on to a bigger school. And secondly, like the family aspect of things is now you'll probably know more of this than I do, but the NIL stuff probably isn't as prevalent at the D2 level where guys are in and out of where it feels more like an NFL roster where you come in and you're out the next year and these guys, you'll get some of that. You'll for sure get some of that, but like there probably will be a core group of guys that are not going to ever leave and they're going to be playing and those are going to end up being some of the best friends and relationships that you have in life. Um, yeah, so I think there's a lot of upside and a lot of things that, should be considered, but Ashland, and then on top of just the facilities and everything else, and just the people is probably the best thing.